For listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Diane Kasmerick, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from several recent issues of the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This is the December 20th issue that we'll begin with. Murray Fire Captain is sex offender. A Murray Joint Fire District captain who was recently re-elected to his position is the subject of a New York State predator alert on Facebook this week. The alert about Jeffrey Elsenheimer Jr. was posted Wednesday. He was re-elected December 4th. New York State Predator Alert is a private Facebook group which says it's keeping New York State residents informed of convicted and unconvicted sex offenders working and living in our communities. In May 2013, the former Village of Medina firefighter, who had a sexual relationship with two teenage boys, was sentenced to 2 years in state prison in Orleans County Court. Elsenheimer had pleaded guilty in March 2013 to 2 counts of third-degree criminal sexual act, punishable by up to 4 years in prison. He had been a paid firefighter and public information officer when he was arrested in August 2012. He is listed on the New York State Sex Offender Registry as a Level 2 offender, meaning he's classified at moderate risk of reoffending. Murray Fire Chief Rick Carey said Thursday afternoon, "At this time, because of the personnel matter, we have been advised by our counsel not to comment on anything." In 2014, then-Governor Andrew Cuomo signed a bill into law that addressed this issue. The legislation requires fire companies to screen new applicants and transfer firefighters for previous sex offenses before accepting the applicant or transfer as a member. The act does not prohibit fire companies from admitting persons with prior sex offenses, nor does it require fire companies to screen or remove any current members. It requires that fire companies inform themselves of any applicant's prior sex offenses and carefully consider the community impact of admitting such individuals as volunteer firefighters. County Office of Emergency Management Coordinator Justin Niederhofer said his office has nothing to do with fire department membership decisions. "The departments set their own membership. We don't have any say on who they allow or don't allow," he said Thursday. "This isn't the first year he's been an officer over there, so I don't know why all of a sudden it's a big deal this year," Niederhofer said. "He was a captain last year." Elsenheimer could not be reached for comment Thursday or Friday. The Firefighters Association of the State of New York, also referred to as FASNY, issued a statement Thursday saying firefighters are placed in a position of trust in their communities and respond to aid people who are often in vulnerable positions. With this in mind, FASNY lobbied strongly in Albany for legislation that provides fire companies, departments, districts with the ability and a mandate to check new applicants or transferring members for a record of sex offense convictions, FASNY said. Prior to FASNY helping bring this legislation into law, local fire departments did not have the statutory ability to screen for prior sex offense convictions. They were only permitted to screen for prior arson convictions. Prior arson convictions had already been automatic grounds for denying an application for a number of years at that time. The statute provides the local fire company, department, or district with the ability to review information on prior sex offense convictions. It receives the information from either the local sheriff's office or the State Office of Fire Prevention and Control. The local fire organization then must apply guidelines under the New York State Correction Law to determine how to proceed with the application. We defer to the local fire organization on the specifics of this matter, as they would have been provided the information to make a determination on the application at the outset of the process, FASNY said in a statement. Our next story, GCEDC directors okay lead agency status, and opponents cry foul in data center decision. Officials of the Genesee County Economic Development Center say it is well within their right to act as lead agency for the state environmental quality review of a proposed 2.2 million square foot data center at the Western New York Science and Technology Advanced Manufacturing Park in the town of Alabama. Opponents of the proposal submitted by Stream U.S. data centers contend that it is more like the fox guarding the henhouse. With several people sitting in on the Thursday afternoon meeting holding signs voicing their opposition, GCEDC directors voted unanimously in favor of a resolution declaring their intent to conduct a coordinated review of Project Double Reed's SEQR application. Board Chairman Peter Zelliff, in a written statement, noted that the GCEDC has acted as lead agency on SEQR for all development related to STAMP since its inception, and as such, the GCEDC is in the best position to investigate all potential impacts associated with Project Double Reed's SEQR application, including making decisions regarding any mitigation measures. The GCEDC is waiting upon a formal application from Stream U.S. Data Centers, the Dallas, Texas-based real estate firm handling the proposal to construct 3 buildings on 90 acres at Stamp. The buildings are projected to use about 500 megawatts of electricity. Matt Fitzgerald, attorney for GCEDC, said, "This is the first step in the SEQR process for any application that comes into the Stamp site. So it doesn't commit the board to any course of action going forward. It's just starting the environmental review." The fact that GCEDC is taking the lead in the SEQR isn't sitting well with 2 citizens who held up TSN to GCEDC No Data Center and Respect Indigenous Rights signs during the meeting. "I think the SEQR process is a conflict, the fox guarding the henhouse," said Christine Zinni. "It seems to me that it's ethically wrong to have an agency overseeing its own environmental review when it is in the best interests of the agency to approve it." Neil Keating, a professor of anthropology at SUNY Brockport, spoke of 3 areas where the GCEDC has failed, with the SEQR process the most immediate concern. "That's like asking your wolf to guard the chickens. That's really backwards as well," he said. When asked to respond, GCEDC President and Chief Executive Officer Mark Massey said the IDA's action for environmental review lead status includes having to send letters out to agencies such as the State Department of Environmental Conservation, Department of Transportation, and Town of Alabama. "If any of the interested and involved agencies have a different opinion, they're more than welcome to send that comment back to us," he said. Usually, the entity that performs the GEIS, or General Environmental Impact Statement, at the start is the one that should remain as the lead agency because they did all the original analysis. Keating also said that he believes the GCEDC has not communicated with the Tonawanda Seneca Nation, while Massey has said he had tried setting up meetings with Seneca leaders. "The critical concern for me as an anthropologist is the behavior of the GCEDC toward the Tonawanda Seneca Nation. They are not consulting with them properly. They're not seeking their consent. They are not communicating in any kind of good faith way," Keating said. "It's been years of this going on without proper dialogue, communication with Tonawanda Seneca Nation," he said, "and I think the reason is very obvious. The Tonawanda Seneca Nation has made it quite clear that they do not want this data center. They do not want the Stamp site at all, for very good reasons." The professor said he didn't understand why the GCEDC would build an industrial site in the middle of a wetlands area that is surrounded by protected lands. "That's just bad business," he said, "and I think that is reflected in the fact that it has been 20 years in the making and they still only have 1 tenant," he offered. "There are many alternative post-industrial sites that would make far more appropriate locations for a data center than in the middle of the Tonawanda wetlands." In response, Massey said, "The Tonawandas received this exact packet of documents from Stream U.S. Data Center on Monday. We received it late Friday. We continually ask them on a weekly basis to set up a meeting to discuss this process and Stamp in general, and they have not responded. I don't know people who represent the nation because when we ask the nation, they say they represent themselves, and nobody speaks for them. We continually ask them to meet, and we'd be happy to do that. As far as being close to the wildlife refuge, Massey said Stamp is a half-mile from there, and there wasn't any opposition when the decision was made in 2008 and 9 to build off Crosby Road in the town of Alabama. We did a 2-year public process. The nation did not send any comments or complaints at the time about the project. We sent a survey out to the town, and 67% of the town was in favor of the Stamp project moving forward. And because of that, the town has been able to provide water to 94% of its residents that they would have been unable to do without the Stamp project. People were all for it back in 2010 and 2012 when the town board unanimously approved the zoning agreement to change the zoning. During the meeting at the GCEDC office on MedTech Drive, Director Craig Yunker refuted messages sent to the board, accusing individual directors of financially benefiting from the placement of a data center at Stamp. We've received inputs, including allegations, that board members on this issue are lining our own pockets. I find this to be not only ill-informed and untrue, but insulting and almost libelous, Yunker said. We operate under what's in the best interests of the community. Allegations that we are lining our pockets are insulting. Yunker said that he was proud of the way the board makes decisions for the benefit of the community, and I'm insulted by the allegations and emails that we are receiving. Our next story, Five Star Bank completes $4 million headquarters renovation. Warsaw. It's been nearly 175 years since Walcott Humphrey founded the Wyoming County Bank, and a lot has changed since 1851. Today, the bank, known since 2005 as Five Star Bank, operates 49 branches across western and central New York, occupies a place in the Rochester skyline, and holds $6.1 billion in assets. One thing that stayed the same, the bank remains headquartered in Warsaw. On Thursday, bank officials doubled down in Five Star's hometown, announcing the completion of a $4 million renovation of the bank's Liberty Street headquarters. Work began in February and concluded this month on the 28,000 square foot, 111-employee office building, which was constructed in 1997. Upgrades include an open office layout and flexible meeting areas, new lighting and video conferencing technology, and the removal of some offices to allow more natural light into shared areas. More than 65% of material removed during the renovation was recycled, the bank noted in a press release. Besides making the office a nicer place to work, Five Star officials say the renovation emphasizes the bank's commitment to Warsaw. Our roots are very deep in Warsaw and Wyoming County, Five Star Bank President and CEO Marty Birmingham said in an interview Thursday. This is our corporate headquarters. If you see our publications, whether they be our SEC annual report or our community report or other official communications that we are required to issue as a public company, Warsaw is the address. Birmingham said that the bank's growing presence, which now ranges from Buffalo to Syracuse, has allowed it to attract talent from across the state. But, he said, that hasn't diluted the bank's focus on the areas it serves, including Wyoming County, where Five Star holds 67.34% of all deposits. As other banks focus on other parts of New York State or the country, frankly, we're locally headquartered, and we live and work and recreate in the communities that we serve, he said. As a locally headquartered community bank, I will tell you that the role that we play to support the well-being of these communities is very important to us. It's a fundamental outcome of, and really called for by, our strategic plan and our annual operating plans. Scott Gardner, Executive Director of the Wyoming County Industrial Development Agency, said Five Star has been an important partner for small and large businesses and homeowners in the county. The fact that they've maintained the branches they have in the county, they've continued to maintain that commitment in their home county and hometown where they were founded, he said by phone Friday. That's really important to this community in particular and the greater regional community as well. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article, United Way providing $150,000 in emergency funds, money to support 211 services in counties including Genesee, Livingston, and Wyoming. The United Way of Greater Rochester and the Finger Lakes says it is responding to a significant increase in requests for assistance by providing $150,000 in emergency support to sustain 211 services. To stabilize operations and maintain access, United Way is providing a $150,000 crisis investment to support 211 services from November 2025 through May 2026. Goodwill of the Finger Lakes will distribute the funds to regional 211 centers based on call volume in Genesee, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Wayne, and Wyoming counties. The public may call 211 for information and referrals for human services and crisis prevention services throughout Finger Lakes and Western New York. During uncertain times, the residents across Greater Rochester and the Finger Lakes turn to 211 for support, United Way officials said. This ensures continued access to food, housing, health care, and other essential resources. Recently, 211 experienced a 180% increase in calls, rising from 316 to 573 in one weekend, with volumes continuing to grow. From December 19, 2024 to December 18th of this year, there were 873 requests for services in top request categories in Genesee County. There were 281 requests for food, 32.2%, and 253, 29%, for housing and shelter. Within housing and shelter, 144, or 56.9%, were for shelters, 44, or 17.4%, for rent assistance, and 30, 11.9%. In Wyoming County, of 214 total requests in top request categories over that time period, 73, or 34.1%, were for housing and shelter, and 33, or 15.4%, were for utilities. Among housing and shelter requests specifically, 29, which is 39.7%, were for shelters, 14, or 19.2%, were for low-cost housing, and 10, or 13.7%, were for rent assistance. In Livingston County, top request categories totaled 716 requests. Of those, 204, or 28.5%, were for housing, 129, or 18%, were for mental health and addictions, 65 calls, or 9.1%, were for food, and 58, or 8.1%, for utilities. The United Way says reduced federal funding has strained partner agency staffing, leading to longer wait times as demand increases. United Way is not dependent on federal funding. Everything we raise, from donors, corporations, and funders, goes right back out into the communities we serve and the hundreds of agencies we support. So long as we continue to meet our campaign goal with our average donor at $2 a week, we will be able to support our partners, said United Way of Greater Rochester and the Finger Lakes Director of Marketing and Community Communications, Aaron Bombard. Bombard said the United Way's role is to identify where the critical needs are and lean into support. The support for 211 is just one example of how we are deploying funds from our United Response Fund in this dynamic time. There will be more critical services in need of support, and United Way will continue to deploy resources because that is what we have done for over 100 years, she said. This support will help maintain accurate resource directories, strengthen frontline staffing, and expand benefit screenings for programs such as Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, Medicaid, broadband access, and new waiver initiatives. 211 is not a luxury, it's a lifeline, President and CEO of United Way of Greater Rochester and the Finger Lakes, Jamie Saunders, said in a press release. When systems strain and families feel the pressure, we step in, quietly, steadily, so help remains within reach. Here's our next article from the December 20th Batavia Daily News. Schumer plans to use what he learned from upstate New York to build Dems' 2026 agenda. Washington. Each year for 27 years, U.S. Senator Charles Schumer has heard from New Yorkers about their struggles, fears, hopes, and successes as he visited each of the state's 62 counties. But after completing his annual statewide tour this week, Schumer said this year stood out for one reason. He found an unprecedented level of anxiety in every corner of the state about rising prices for basics like food, housing, healthcare, and energy. This year was different than in the past because the cost of living, the affordability crisis, was just dominant, Schumer told Syracuse.com. You had people worrying in 2008 during the financial crisis about keeping their jobs, but this was much more about paying the bills. Now, Schumer plans to take what he learned, especially from dozens of visits to working-class families in upstate New York, to lay a foundation for a national agenda that he believes will help Democrats win the 2026 midterm elections. Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, met with his leadership team Wednesday in Washington to ask them to come up with a series of initiatives to lower costs and counteract the tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump's administration. Schumer said his party will unveil details of an affordability agenda in the weeks ahead focused on 5 key areas: lowering the cost of health care, energy, housing, groceries, and Trump tariffs. After listening to hundreds of upstate New Yorkers, the 75-year-old said he knows how Democrats can chart a new path forward politically. He especially wants to address the stubbornly high cost of food, which disproportionately hurts working-class households and people dependent on SNAP, the federal food assistance program. In a May visit to central New York, Schumer heard warnings that local families struggling with food prices would be hit hard by Trump's plan to cut nearly $200 billion over 10 years from SNAP, the federal food aid program for low-income Americans. The cuts are due to take effect in March. Schumer said about 20,000 of the 108,000 people in central New York who depend on SNAP could lose their aid. Democrats in Congress introduced a bill just before Thanksgiving that would reverse those cuts. Schumer's visit in May marked a rare time when local faith leaders, farmers, and food pantry operators spoke out on a political issue. The event also stood out because it took place in Oswego County, one of the reddest counties in New York, where Trump won by wide margins in all 3 of his presidential elections. Now Democrats will try to flip some of those Trump voters in House and Senate races across the nation by showing them that their party has a better plan than Republicans to address the cost of living. Schumer said it's clear from his travels across New York that people are desperate for some sort of relief. He said a man he recently met in the Hudson Valley told me he's sitting at the table figuring out whether he should pay his mortgage and not get health care or pay health care and lose his home. These are stories you hear all over the place. Democrats have pushed in Congress to extend for 3 years the Affordable Care Act, subsidies that expire December 31st. Without a renewal, health insurance premiums for millions of Americans are expected to spike in 2026. Schumer said he also worries that some rural hospitals in upstate New York could close or lay off employees because of steep Medicaid costs included in Trump's Big Beautiful Bill Act. Schumer is pushing to pass the Protecting Healthcare and Lowering Costs Act, which would repeal the Medicaid cuts and extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. He also wants to restore clean energy tax credits eliminated by Trump and Republicans in Congress. Those cuts include a 30% tax credit that served as an incentive for central New York homeowners to install residential solar panels, heat pumps, or energy storage equipment and lower their energy bills. Separately, Democrats are pushing back on Trump's tariffs, which have cost New York consumers an extra $4,200 per year this year, according to a state report that examined the impact of the tariffs. U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat of New York, has introduced a bill with 14 colleagues that would halt the tariffs and provide a tariff refund to small businesses. Now, from the opinion page, an article by Robin Abkarian of the Los Angeles Times. Australia just banned kids from social media. Shouldn't we all? Last week, Australia became the first country in the world to enact a social media ban for kids under 16. As the children of Oz wept and gnashed their teeth, I presume, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese urged them to start a new sport, learn a new instrument, or read that book that has been sitting there on your shelf for some time. The ban is an incredibly bold, life-affirming move. You can only imagine how hard tech companies fought against it. Reddit has already filed a legal challenge to the new law. I've always referred to this as the first domino, which is why they pushed back, said Julie Inman Grant, the country's e-safety minister. Indeed, Denmark is poised to ban social media for kids under 15. Norway, too. French officials have recommended banning the platforms for kids under 15 and instituting a curfew for those between the ages of 15 and 18. In the U.S., many states are experimenting with bans, including California and New York, targeting the addictive qualities of platforms. I can tell you from personal experience that all of these moves are long overdue. Next month, my 15-year-old niece and I will celebrate the 7th anniversary of her arrival on my doorstep. I never expected to raise another child, especially not as a single mother during this stage of my life. We've managed, pretty spectacularly at times, to make a go of it. But the biggest source of tension for us, bar none, has been her iPhone. We had signed the pledge to wait until 8th for a smartphone. In 6th grade, while a lot of her friends had the latest smartphones, she used a Gab, which looked like an iPhone but lacked internet connectivity. She started 8th grade, got a smartphone, and that's when many of our troubles began. There was the incessant scrolling, the real-time texting that allows no time for thoughtful response, the rage baiting from so-called friends, the hysteria around breaking a Snapchat streak, a gamified feature designed to encourage daily engagement. Her drop in situational awareness was equally alarming. How many times have I asked her not to stare down at her phone when she is walking to and from the bus or crossing the street? How many times have I insisted she put the phone down when we are at the dinner table? That she leave it in her backpack during school hours? How many times have I just given up on hoping that the dopamine hit she gets from just opening her smartphone will ever be replaced by the joy of reading a book? In September, after Charlie Kirk was murdered, I told her there was an awful video of the shooting. "Oh yeah," my niece said casually. "I saw it a bunch of times the day it happened. Everyone at school is watching it." Her school, I might add, is part of the LA Unified School District, which banned cell phones this year. What a joke. This generation of children is unwittingly being used as lab rats for the effects of technology on the brain. We know from numerous studies that heavy social media use can lead to depression, anxiety, loneliness, and suicidal ideation, and that the platforms depend on addicting kids with content tailored to their interests to keep them online, just as they do with adults. Please don't accuse me of succumbing to the same moral panic that has accompanied every technological innovation in history. Violent video games cause mass shootings, rock music leads to over-sexualization, etc. I am telling you, as someone who has stepchildren in their 50s, a daughter in her 30s, and now a teenager at home, smartphones and social media have fundamentally altered childhood. One day we will look back at this period of unbridled social media use, free-for-all texting and never-ending screen time, and wonder how we could have done this to our kids. Despite protestations to the contrary, social media companies, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Roblox, TikTok, X, Discord, YouTube, and Reddit, are craven when it comes to the safety of minors. You've probably read stories about how Silicon Valley techies don't let their own children use their products. There's a reason for that. The tech companies care only about growing their user numbers and increasing their profits. You simply cannot read things any other way. Even the most cursory search turns up many thousands of lawsuits filed against social media companies by parents alleging the platforms have harmed their children. Snapchat and TikTok have been linked in studies to teenage fentanyl deaths. Instagram has been shown to funnel teens toward content that promotes eating disorders and self-harm. A handful of parents have filed wrongful death lawsuits alleging that AI chatbots encourage their children to take their own lives. Last month, the Los Angeles County mother filed a lawsuit against Roblox, a gaming platform marketed as safe for children, and Discord, alleging her 12-year-old daughter met a sexual predator who posed as a lonely 15-year-old. The predator then persuaded the girl to send sexually explicit photos over Discord. Her innocence has been snatched from her, says the lawsuit, and her life will never be the same. Restricting teens is going to be a super messy process. I understand why kids think the new rules suck. Critics have raised concerns about free speech and about how these rules could drive teens to darker corners of the internet. And yes, of course, while parents bear some of the responsibility for out-of-control social media use of their kids, they can only do so much. When Mark Zuckerberg coined the Facebook motto, "Move fast and break things," I don't think any of us ever realized that our children would be among the things that they would break. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article from local news: Coffee, Cannabis, and Sandwiches. What's coming to Geneseo's commercial strip in 2026? Brace for bulldozers, blueprints, and, eventually, burritos. Geneseo's busy Lakeville Road commercial strip is set to grow in 2026, with plans filed for 4 new restaurants, a cannabis dispensary, and a new town hall breaking ground or opening in the next year. 3 new restaurants, Chipotle, Starbucks, and Jersey Mike's, will be newly constructed in the Millstone development, the area between Volunteer and Morgan View Roads, anchored by the Rochester Regional Health Geneseo Medical Campus, which opened in 2022. Representatives for the Millstone development did not respond to repeated requests for comment. The remaining additions, Linden Coffee, New York Flower Depot, and the new town hall, are renovations of existing buildings along the strip. Geneseo's town offices are moving up, a quarter-mile up the hill, that is, to a former medical office adjacent to Gateway Park. Construction is underway on a 2-story addition to the existing 1980 building at 4263 Lakeville Road. When it's complete, the town will own its office outright instead of renting space in the Livingston County-owned Millennium Drive complex. Town Council member Ron Maxwell told the LCN in November that the move will offer more modern office space and a new meeting room and result in long-term cost savings to the town. The second location of an independent bird-in-hand Pennsylvania coffee shop, Linden Coffee, will replace the 31-year-old Geneseo self-serve car wash on a property that straddles Lakeview and Reservoir Roads. The owners, wedding photographer Courtney née Linden Dupengieser, and her husband, Cattle-Genics Company administrator and Perry native Jack Dupengieser, opened the Pennsylvania location 2 years ago in a converted 1877 Amish schoolhouse. In its Pennsylvania location, Linden Coffee serves coffee, tea, caffeinated energy drinks, and baked goods, and sells a line of Instagrammable hats, mugs, and sweaters. Jake Dupengieser could not be reached for comment. After initially eyeing the former Pizza Hut building, this independently owned cannabis dispensary now plans to open at 4245 Lakeville Road, and this is called the New York Flower Depot. It's opening in the former Metro Mattress storefront. The dispensary is in the final stages of state licensing to sell New York-grown cannabis flower, edibles, and drinks, says proprietor Mark Fiorenza, a Rochester real estate broker and restaurateur. Fiorenza said this Wednesday that he anticipates an opening date in February or March 2026. We're just really excited to get a store open in the village of Geneseo, he said. Next, Chipotle Mexican Grill. This Southern California chain was coy about its Geneseo plans last Thursday, with spokesperson Annie Gradinger writing in an email, "We cannot confirm a location at this time, but we are exploring opportunities to bring our real food to Geneseo." But with excavators on site and plans filed bearing the Chipotle logo, it's all but certain that the build-your-own Mexican restaurant chain is coming to the Millstone development in a planned standalone building with a drive-through lane. Jersey Mike's. Submarine sandwich chain Jersey Mike's is set to get a Geneseo franchise in the third or fourth quarter of 2026, company spokesperson Kyle Potvin told the LCN last week. The new store, located in the Millstone development, will be one of more than 4,000 Jersey Mike's restaurants nationwide, including one in Batavia and several in the greater Rochester area. Jersey Mike's will be Geneseo's fifth sub shop, joining Aunt Cookie's sub shop downtown, two Subway locations, one on Lakeville Road and one inside the Walmart Supercenter, and the old-fashioned sub shop inside Wegmans. Starbucks Coffee. It's double-double for Starbucks, whose planned drive-through coffee shop will be its second Geneseo location. The new shop, located in the Millstone development, joins an existing Starbucks inside the McVitie College Union at SUNY Geneseo. It's also Starbucks' second attempt at a Lakeville Road store. Its prior location closed in 2008 and was located just across the road from the planned new store in the building that is now Tacos and Chiles. Starbucks will face stiff caffeine competition with 3 independent cafes and 9 chain coffee shops already operating in Geneseo. Starbucks representatives did not respond to requests for comments. An article from Genesee Valley BOCES, LPN students complete capstone projects. Batavia. At Genesee Valley BOCES, the Adult Education Licensed Practical Nursing Program was more than a classroom experience. It was a journey of compassion, leadership, and personal growth. The culmination of that journey came through the LPN Capstone Project that connected classroom lessons with real-world issues and the hearts of the students preparing to enter the nursing field. Instructor Janet Green described the capstone as a way to show what they've learned throughout the year, not just in nursing skills, but in understanding community health. Now in its third year, the project challenged students to research local issues, design real-world solutions, and recognize their potential as change makers, GV BOCES officials said in a news release. This was all part of what we call the community health section, Green said. It covered disparities in health and access to care. They had to choose something in their own community and build a workable plan, complete with stakeholders, funding ideas, and evaluation strategies. It was truly their opportunity to see themselves as leaders. For many of the students, the project became deeply personal. Each capstone reflected their lived experiences and the challenges they saw around them, from substance use and pollution to the rising cost of housing and limited access to basic resources. For Allison Budd, who had worked as a CNA for 11 years, her project on substance abuse in Monroe County was a reflection of what she had witnessed in healthcare and in her community. It's a big problem in Rochester, Budd said. I wanted to focus on something that affects so many lives, and part of that is access to naloxone boxes. Making them easier to find could save lives. Her project emphasized prevention, awareness, and accessibility, a nurse's way of extending help beyond the bedside. Budd said she wanted her capstone to remind people that addiction touches every family in some way. We can't always fix everything, she said, but we can make sure people have a fighting chance. Stephanie Manchester drew her inspiration from her rural community, where many families still lived without access to public water. A lot of people in my area still don't have public water, Manchester said. We got a grant for a sewer, which is great, but I kept thinking water is essential. People don't always know how to advocate for it, and it puts a real hardship on families. The state should be looking at what's truly most important for people's health. Manchester, who had spent more than 20 years working as a CNA, said the experience reminded her that advocacy is a powerful part of nursing. Nia Cooper chose to explore the impact of rising housing costs, an issue that hits close to home for many working families. Aisha Lee brought a personal perspective to her project, asthma prevention in Rochester. She has lived with asthma since childhood and knew firsthand how the environment around her could affect her breathing. Her display included colorful visuals that helped families identify triggers and manage symptoms, using a red, yellow, green chart to show when care was needed. For Julie Cordry, a former military medic, the topic of obesity in Wyoming County reflected her lifelong interest in preventive care. "Half of us are inactive," Cordry said. "If we don't teach our children to eat well and be active, we're just passing the problem on." Her project promoted community involvement and family-based wellness programs. When the class presented their capstones, the hallway came alive with color, statistics, and powerful personal messages. "We worked on these over 5 weeks," Manchester said. "Each week we built on what we learned, from picking a topic, to researching, to finding real data and creating solutions. By the end, it wasn't just a project, it was a piece of who we are." Many students reflected on how their personal experiences shaped their understanding of healthcare and empathy. "The middle class is struggling," Cooper said. "We make too much to qualify for help, but not enough to survive." These projects gave us a chance to talk about those real issues. As classmates discussed their topics and shared their stories, they found common ground in their desire to help others, to bring compassion to every patient they encounter, and to advocate for change where it's needed most. As the class reflected on their time together, the sense of pride and connection was unmistakable. "I love our class," Bud said. "Everyone here is going to be a great nurse. We've lifted each other up every step of the way." For Green, that bond represented everything she hoped the capstone would accomplish. "I hope they took away a sense of empowerment, that they can create change in their communities," she said. "They are leaders, advocates, and healers, and I couldn't be prouder." We turn now to the sports pages of the Batavia Daily News from December 20th, and these are some high school sports stories. The first one is Antinor shines, Notre Dame takes down Wheatland Chili. Batavia. The Notre Dame boys basketball team played a home game against Wheatland Chili on Thursday night, winning big with a final score of 88-24. Chase Antinor led the ND team in scoring with 16 points and added on 8 rebounds as well. TJ Cephas had a great game as well for the Irish, posting 13 points and also notching 5 assists and 5 steals. Matthew McCulley put up 11 points and 6 rebounds. Carter Suro scored 10 points, and Ben Ferrando posted 8 points and 5 rebounds for ND. Tonight was a night where everybody was able to contribute to the win. Every player got in the scorebook with at least 2 buckets, and we shared the ball extremely well. We did shoot extremely poor from the foul line, so we will be practicing those all practice tomorrow. Now we have 11 days before our next game, which is the Lions Club tournament against a very good Leroy team. So we need to be prepared for a great game, Notre Dame head coach Mikey Rapone said. Notre Dame is now 5-1 with the win and will next play Leroy as part of the Pete Aris Christmas tournament at Genesee Community College on December 29th. Wheatland Chili drops to 0-5 after the loss and will look to grab its first win of the season in the team's next game against York at home, starting at 5:30 on December 29th. In our next story, high school swimming and diving, Batavia Notre Dame girls and Attica boys victorious after dual meet. Batavia Notre Dame swimming and diving hosted Attica for a dual meet Thursday night, with the Batavia Notre Dame girls picking up their first win of the season, 62-46, and Attica boys taking the 48-33 victory. On the girls' side for Batavia Notre Dame, Isla Courier Dunton in the 200 free at 2 minutes 37.63 seconds and 100 breaststroke 1 minute 35.08 seconds. Ashley Berger in the 200 IM 3 minutes 16.96 seconds and 500 free 7 minutes 17.77 seconds. Lily Bellamy in the 100 free 1 minute 5.17 seconds and 100 breaststroke 1 minute 15.31 seconds, and Mari Bellatera in the 50 free 32.57 seconds, all picked up wins for the Irish Devils. In relay events, Berger, Courier, Dunton, Bellamy, Bellaterra win the 200 medley relay for BND, 2 minutes, 26.15 seconds. The same group also captured first in the 200 free relay, 22 minutes, 9.35 seconds. Attica's lone win on the girls' side came from Quinn Jurgi, Madeline Berger, Ellie Meyer, Nadia Wesolowski, taking the 400 free relay, 5 minutes, 21.65 seconds. This was a very motivating win for our girls tonight. With 2 7th graders, a freshman and a sophomore, to get a team win really boosts their confidence moving forward. We had a lot of best times tonight, and we will use our 2-week Christmas break to continue working on the fine details to keep improving, BND head coach Eric Geithner said about the girls' win. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Next, we turn to the lifestyle section. This article is Emotional Fitness, Ways to Make the Holidays Feel Wonderful, Even if You Don't Feel It. Not every holiday season can be merry and bright. Perhaps you have recently lost a loved one, or your relationship is a little rocky. Money may be an issue, which is sad because the only thing better than getting presents is buying them for those you love. Whatever the cause, this year, if you don't have that spirit of the season inside of you, it's okay. I have had rock-hard holidays and too many spent all alone, but it's better to be on your own than with someone who's inappropriate. The trick about the holidays and how to make them great is being with people who make you feel good. Now, I know I just said that doing it alone is okay, but if you want to actually feel some joy and have a laugh or two, get with some folks who get you and make some holiday cheer. If money is an issue, start by thinking of what you would do if you could afford to do anything at all. Whatever it is, figure out a way to give yourself some small part of it. For example, if you've always wanted to go to Italy but don't have the money for a hotel or airfare, buy a bottle of Italian wine instead and make some pasta. If you want, you can even try your hand at more complicated Italian cooking. Watch a video on how they do the holidays in Italy and try a new idea. By the way, this article is by Barton Goldsmith. If friends and family are unavailable, you can always volunteer to help feed the homeless or help out at your local assisted living community. In this case, you will be giving of yourself, and doing something for others could spoil this bad mood you've been fighting. Trust me, nurturing others is good for your mind and spirit. Negative energy is out there for all the taking you want, and it won't be hard to find. But you can choose not to look for it, at least for a little while, and heal your heart by letting a little joy in. The holidays are almost always better with some human interaction. Wherever you need to go to find it, I suggest you do. Many times I've loaded up my sled and dropped gifts to friends, just staying a little while before going to the next person's house. By the time I get home, I'm ready for a movie and some quiet time. If you are alone and don't want to be, this activity will help you sleep more peacefully at night. If you're not feeling the spirit this year, I suggest taking one of the above actions. However you choose to do it, reaching out to other people can make your holidays bright. And again, this was an article by Barton Goldsmith, PhD, an award-winning psychotherapist and humanitarian. He's also a columnist, author of 8 books, and a blogger. Our next article from the lifestyle section is called Special Delivery, Local Boy Donates Toys to Noyes. And of course, Noyes, spelled N-O-Y-E-S, is the Noyes Memorial Hospital in Dansville. A Wayland Fire District truck rode into the front loop at UR Noyes Memorial Hospital on Friday, December 12th, but not for an emergency, for a gesture of kindness. Out of the fire truck hopped young Lucas, age 7, a local boy who spent the last several months selling Buffalo Bills-themed bracelets to raise money for gifts for pediatric patients at Noyes. I make bracelets and I use the money and I buy the presents for the kids in the hospital, said Lucas. In his second year doing the toy donation, Lucas was able to raise nearly $7,500 for his holiday cause. Last year he donated 70 gifts, but this year he was able to deliver 350 gifts to Noyes, and he needed a U-Haul truck to do so. "We bought a lot," said Lucas. "Me and my mom both picked out the toys. We picked out girl toys and boy toys and little kid toys and big kid toys so they can have what they want for Christmas." The toys were purchased at Walmart in Geneseo, Fisher-Price in East Aurora, and Target in Henrietta. The toys ranged from those that are appropriate for newborns to teens. There were even some blankets for adult patients as well. "Your work here is going to make a big difference for a lot of children," Mike Donegan, Vice President of Operations at Noyes, said while presenting Lucas with a certificate of kindness in recognition of his compassion, creativity, and dedication to the community. Lucas's venture took a full calendar year to complete, starting the day after the toy drop in 2024. Lucas and his mother started shopping in October and completed the wrapping the day of the delivery. "It's unbelievable what this kid has done," said Donegan. "Given the patients, things like this make a massive difference. They're in the hospital. It's a different environment. They're scared at times, and this really makes them more comfortable." "We are truly grateful for Lucas and the joy he brings," said Dr. Chad Teeters, President and CEO of UR Medicine Noyes Health. "His thoughtfulness and hard work put smiles on the faces of so many during a time when it is needed most." Tracy Chiotti, Director of Public Relations and Marketing, said the gifts will be handed out now through Christmas. Lucas plans to continue the project next year. Next, we turn to the books and authors section of the Batavia Daily News, and this is a book review. Canticle immerses readers in 13th century mysticism. This is a review of a book called Canticle by author Janet Rich Edwards. The cover of Canticle depicts a woman in a vibrant red hooded cloak swirling away from the reader. It hints at what's inside, a mystical story that immerses us in an earlier century, in the vein of Lauren Groff's Matrix or Sue Monk Kidd's The Book of Longings. If you loved either of them, as I did, you might have a hard time putting down Canticle. The author, Janet Rich Edwards, is a professor of epidemiology at Harvard Medical School. Not the typical background for a novelist writing about medieval women mystics. But she says on her website that after writing more than 300 papers for scientific journals, she wondered if she could convey more truth, or at least different truths, through story. And Canticle is quite a story. Alice, the protagonist on the cover, lives in a village near Bruges, Brugge in Dutch, in what is now Belgium. The novel begins in 1295, when at age 16, Alice loses her beloved mother, who dies in childbirth. Side note, Rich Edwards researches women's health. The deeply religious woolmaker's daughter yearns to read her mother's treasured Psalter, the Book of Psalms, in Latin. She can read in Dutch, and befriends Finn, a dyer's son, who teaches her Latin, in exchange for her teaching him to read. After hearing a visiting friar read a Latin verse about love, she persuades Finn to locate a copy of the Canticle. Finally, we get to the book title, the most beautiful, the most poetic psalm. But when Finn joins a monastery and her father wants her to marry an older merchant, Alice flees, ending up at a community of religious women she beguines. They refuse to answer to the Pope, Boniface VIII at the time, much to the ire of the local bishop, who calls them self-righteous burrs beneath his saddle. The bishop suspects one of these women has been translating scripture into Dutch, a scandalous idea that would allow people to read their Bibles without a priest. Heresy breeds where butchers read the Bible. Alice isn't the translator, but she does believe she's been chosen by God for a higher purpose and is impatient to be shown her gift. Soon she is. While praying over a dying boy at the hospital, she feels a buzzing in her hands. Rich Edwards' descriptive writing is lovely and lyrical, as evidenced here. She bleeds into the boy, and he bleeds into the prayer, and the prayer beats with his heart, and she breathes the prayer. Alice emerges from a trance to find the boy healed. Townspeople begin calling her saint, and it's not long before the bishop decides he can use Alice's gift to his advantage. It's not giving away too much to note that the bishop and the other men in the church hierarchy do not come off well in Canticle. The book's women, on the other hand, are full of surprises. You don't need to be religious to appreciate this novel, but you might get out more out of it if you have a basic biblical knowledge. I also found myself looking up more about the Beguines and Anchoresses, fascinated by the thought of someone choosing to live a solitary life, locked in a cell connected to the church. Finally, you should be open to the idea of miracles. Canticle is an auspicious debut, and hopefully not the last novel we'll read from Rich Edwards. And next we have a review of a nonfiction book. The review is by Chris Barsanti of the Minnesota Star Tribune. The article is called "Book Argues That Pop Culture is Eating Itself." The phrase, "time is a flat circle," often refers to how the manic post-pandemic news cycle makes comprehension of the recent past impossible. A similarly dazed bafflement is explored in W. David Marks's lucid and entertaining, yet despairing book about the new millennium's flattening of culture. The book is called Blank Space. One of the primary culprits Marks identifies is perhaps his most controversial theme, omnivorism. Mark does not see artistic freedom in the breakdown of cultural hierarchies and increasing genre mixing. He sees risk aversion, anything to fill the blank spaces. When country, R&B, hip-hop, and classic rock become interchangeable bits to sample, rather than distinct musical styles, nothing stands out, he argues. Genre blending gave hip-hop a burst of innovation in the early 2000s, Marks writes, but by the 2010s, most popular music followed a formula: Swedish pop production, alt-rock melodies, and 70s grooves. For Marks, the understandable desire to cross musical boundaries in once unthinkable ways has turned into a slurry of stagnation. He describes the now lost narrative of cultural transitions. The Beatles knocked off Elvis, were dethroned by Led Zeppelin, who lost out to disco and punk, and so on. Marx sees some original art still being created, but the prevalence of pastiche and lack of urgency, due in part, he believes, to the desire of poptimist critics to celebrate the successful rather than highlight the lesser known, means that new aesthetics no longer displaced older artists. Playing a bit too perfectly to the Gen Xers, who will make up much of the book's readership, Marx starts with an illustrative look at Lollapalooza. Once a celebration of alternative music, the 1992 festival featured Pearl Jam, then fretting that their success meant selling out. 30 years later, one of Lollapalooza's main acts was DJ D-Sol, the stage name of Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon. He could only share a stage with real musicians, Marx writes, in a world that assigns equal value to commerce and creativity. Blank Space is less a rant against arts monetization than it is a despairing look at the enthusiastic embrace of selling out. Seeing how the early 2000s performatively grungy downtown vibe, the Strokes, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, was packaged and sold without regret, he notes that you just had to party hard and find the right corporate sponsor. Marx also ponders the strange desire of mega artist stands to celebrate their heroes' business savvy as much as their art. He mordantly describes Taylor Swift's fans' ecstatic reaction to her re-recording albums in order to devalue the masters, then owned by Scooter Braun, as people picking sides in a corporate rivalry between multimillionaires. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the December 20th issue of the Batavia Daily News. Your reader has been Diane Kasmerick. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the East Aurora Advertiser. At 11 o'clock, we have the Niagara Gazette. And at noon, we have the Dunkirk Observer. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555.
Hello, this is Marian Heatherly, Community Engagement Coordinator for your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and I'd like to talk to you as another year comes to a close. We've been reflecting on what we've accomplished in 2025 and what needs to be done in the new year. And you, our listeners, are at the heart of everything. Did you know there's a survey form on our website for listeners who want to provide feedback on programs?
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,